Kelvin, do you know if Keith is on his way?
I can check. He did tell me yesterday that he was planning on being here.
Okay, we can give him another minute or so. Good afternoon, everybody. How's everyone doing?
Afternoon, mate.
Trustee Dukowski, good to finally see you. I won't say in person, but
Does anyone have a sugar buzz from yesterday?
Or from today, Karen. I'm eating all the candy today,
Oh, okay.
picking it out of the kids' bags.
This isn't good for you. You shouldn't eat this.
Yeah. Unfortunately, my daughter is allergic to peanuts.
Oh,
That is really disappointing this time of year when I can eat all the Reese's and the Snickers myself.
Kelvin, I talked to Matt and we're clear on everything going forward now, I think.
Yeah, we're setting up a call between me and the group. I read it as well.
Okay.
Okay.
okay. Well, we'll since it's 3:02, we'll go ahead and get started, and then as Keith hops on, you know, hopefully he'll hop on soon. I'm calling this meeting of the Executive Committee of the Las Vegas Clark County Library District Board of Trustees to order at 3:02 p.m. on Wednesday, November 1st. Miss Nance, would you call roll, please?
Sure. Chair Wah,
Present.
Trustee Rogers, Trustee Haran,
present.
Trustee Whiteley,
Present.
and for the record, we have Trustee Bukowski on, and I believe that is the only other board member on the call.
Sounds good, and welcome, Trustee Dukowski. And then as Trustee Rogers arrives, we'll just mark him present. Agenda item number 2, public comment. Is there anyone signed up for public comment, or is there anyone here who would like to share any public comment?
I don't have anyone signed up.
Sounds good. Is there anyone here who would like to share any public comment at this time? Seeing none, we'll go ahead and close public comment. Agenda number 3, committee action to accept proposed agenda. Could I get a motion to approve the agenda?
Motion to approve.
Second.
Motion is second. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. The agenda is accepted. Agenda item number 4, new business discussion and possible board action to recommend to the Board of Trustees for approval an evaluation form for the executive director of the Las Vegas Clark County Library District. So some background. So I'll get started, and then I'll give it over to Director Serpico to fill in any pieces that I may have missed. But the background that, as I understand it, in 2011, the Board of Trustees approved a form evaluating the performance of the executive director. In 2022, a new form was implemented for executive director Kelvin Watson. Throughout the evaluation process this year, several trustees expressed some concerns with the new form, Um, and I've asked this committee to make a recommendation to the full board of trustees. And kind of the three options, I'm certainly open to others or more, is to maintain the current form, make adjustments to the current form, or implement a new form entirely. So with that, I'll turn it over to Director Serpico if you want to fill in any gaps that I missed, and then we can chat it out.
The new form that was in 2022 was very similar to the previous form used before that. I think that's circulated, which went back to, I believe, 2015 and 2018, which predates my time here. There was another form developed for the administrative team that was circulated as a potential new form. But again, it's the chair of the board who will drive that process. I think we were looking for a couple of things from what I understand was a clear timeline on the executive's evaluation process, and kind of the steps that go with that to help guide the chair of the board through that process. What form will be used, and then also do the goals get established in this committee and then move forward on the form, as was discussed at the last meeting. How do those goals, annual goals, get set by the executive director, which would be part of that evaluation form. In the past, it appears the executive director pretty much just did a narrative, wrote up what they did for the entire year, broke it out into sections, and I believe that was sent out. And then that was filled into a form that was pretty similar to the current form, in terms of, and then comments were made on that form. That's really the background. I don't have any additional history other than what was used for the previous executive director, and then what we had put together for the administrative team, Kelvin and myself, and then also to a proposed kind of calendar to help guide us.
And thank you, Jeff. And just for I'll kick it off and then I'll open it up. So I've been kind of doing my research a little bit on kind of what other folks in similar positions to Kelvin's have in our own community. So obviously, Las Vegas City Council, Clark County, Regional Flood Control District, RTC, SNWA, all those folks, the school district as well. And they're kind of fall into two groups. The first group is Las Vegas City Council, County Commission, RTC, RFCD, SNWA, that have no form. And that evaluation is the executive director writes up an annual report, meets with the members of whatever governing board individually, and then that discussion takes place in public. The other side of the spectrum is Clark County School District, which is like 20 pages and has 5 headings and 5 subheadings in each, and it's a whole thing on the complete opposite end of the spectrum. And so I think, obviously, I think that speaks to. I mean, I certainly see the role of the executive director for this district as more in line with kind of the duties of that previous group, which is just that he's kind of guiding a ship. I've also looked at some other kind of model evaluations that exist out there for other districts put out by the Urban Libraries Council, but a lot of those seem tailored to smaller districts, looking at kind of more really kind of granular things that I don't think are things that necessarily that our executive director is involved in on the day-to-day, just given the size and complexity and independence of our district. So I'm just throwing that out as just a basis for kind of the research that I've done and kind of where we're at, and then I'll open it up to other members of the committee to let's get it started. So Trustee Whiteley, I see you are off mute, so we'll kick it off with you.
Well, that was accidental, but sure, but I'm happy to take it. I appreciate you looking into all of those things. I think it's really important that we understand sort of what the standard is, because I feel like that's one of the things that's hindering us in general is what's the standard across the industry, in the city, and in our past, which is the one thing that I will say, and I know I've said it before, you know, I'm relatively new, certainly not as new as Karen and Christopher, but new enough to not have a long background. I never had another executive director besides Executive Director Watson in this position. So I still remain really curious as to what those evaluations look like prior. And I understand that we, you know, maybe don't have them. I would like for us to look a little bit further into that, because that doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me that we wouldn't really have them. Because I want to make sure that, you know, we're being consistent and not making up a new set of principles for one person, because that feels a little bit less than workable to me. The other thing I would say is I certainly don't want to get into a 20-page form. That sounds like a nightmare to me. But I think understanding what the job description is that our executive director agreed to, and then tying characteristics back to that is really important. I think we need to evaluate him against what him or her, wherever it may be down the line, what we've hired them to do, right? And so if that is a little bit like the executive team form, where we have characteristics of leadership or whatever, where we want to give a rating on that and then talk about goals, I think that's terrific. But that's sort of where my brain is with it. I think it's super, super important that we nail down the timeline. It's absolutely, to me, unfair that we've had the team working on goals without any feedback, and now we're like, hey, 6 months in, we might change it. I just don't think that that's a great look for any of us. So I really want to make sure we nail down that timeline today, if we can. Is that helpful, Nate?
Yes, it is. Vice Chair Rogers.
Yes, I'm gonna try to speak quickly before the next airplane flies over the campus and I'm outside. But I would agree wholeheartedly with what Kate is saying. I would be very opposed to creating a new process for Kelvin when we haven't done that in the past. And I would be strongly in support of keeping the current process as is for this evaluation period. And if we want to make a new process, let's not rush. Let's focus on a new process for the next evaluation period, not this current period where we're 3, 4, 5, 6 months into this. And if we start making changes to what Kelvin's process, his goals are, I'm sure that's going to have a ripple effect on his team members, because I would expect that there is alignment across all the team members with the vision of the executive director and the library. And so I think that would be a much heavier lift to impose that work on all of us. And I have been on the board for, I guess, 3 or 4 years. And I have never, as a member, been included in the evaluation process of the executive director. So I am unfamiliar with whatever that process has been in the past. And so I think if we want to relook at it, then we should take a more holistic approach and not try to rush into something, and to treat Kelvin differently than what we've treated other executive directors in the same role.
And I'll just echo that. I mean, my concern kind of from the beginning has been, you know, why is it an issue now? Was it an issue with his first evaluation? And of course, the previous executive director had 1 page front and back. And so my concern was certainly just the appearance that comes from changing it, you know, midway, when objectively, I think most of us can agree that Kelvin's done an extraordinary job thus far. So I don't see any reason, you know, for that to have kind of been a thing. But Trustee Shelton, I saw you had your hand up. I will go to the committee first and just see if Trustee Huron has any thoughts, and then we'll come to you.
You know, I really appreciate what Keith said, and Kate as well. I feel almost as if we're making this complicated because Kelvin has done such an outstanding job. So we have to make the hoops bigger and higher and harder to jump through, instead of just evaluating him on his successes. And so I agree that working on a new form you know, outside of this time frame is a great idea, but I feel like we should be evaluating Kelvin based on what, you know, the form that we started with, or at least some closed version of that, rather than changing things entirely during this evaluation period.
Thank you. Trustee Shelton.
Yeah, I think I kind of echo everyone's comment, as I just want to make sure that I'm heard, because you know, I've had the opportunity to talk to some people as well. But I think that, you know, Nathan, you've done a great job of doing the your due diligence of finding out what's good and what's not. But I mean, I think that, you know, Kelvin, Brother Watson knows the actual expectations as our CEO. I mean, his job description is we all know as well. And I think that I think the timeline, though, is definitely something that we should definitely look into, so that we're all on the same page, right? And we can kind of go in at the halfway mark and kind of evaluate to see where you are. But I also think that it is unfair to kind of change it at this point in time. But I think that we all know the work that Kelvin's doing. He's doing a great job for the district. And because I know at the end of the day, when the evaluation is done, the results will be clear. Thank you.
Thank you. And iPhone, if you could state your name for the record.
Hi, this is Trustee Elaine Sanchez.
Go ahead, Trustee Sanchez.
Yes, I just wanted to say I agree that we don't need to change the process for now, because the board unfortunately was not prepared to have the goals stated at the last time. I was there when we had our closed session. There were 3 board members saying that they were not prepared to do the goals. And now we're having a conversation about not changing the goals. So I guess as a new member, I'm trying to understand the process. Could you explain that to me?
So the way that the process has been, certainly since I've been on the board since 2021, and I don't know if Dr. Rogers has insight beyond that, but has just been that similar to, I think, what we've seen in you know, some other boards like Clark County, City of Las Vegas, RTC, etc., is that the evaluation is driven by the executive director, general manager, county manager, whatever you want to call it, reporting on the year past and looking forward to the year ahead, and the board then discussing that, you know, based on, of course, regular communication with the director, the monthly reports we receive, and just personal observation, and then from there he's evaluated on his performance, and then off to the races until the next year. I think the question for us today, and certainly the board later on, is just, what does that look like in terms of again, you know, there were 2 kind of major points of contention, or maybe 3. One was, well, I guess 2 of them are related, which is the form and the opportunity for trustees to share their opinion on goals or avenues for improvement, and then the calendar, the timeline by which we need to accomplish these things. So those are kind of the 2 conversations. I know that Mr. Serpico and myself have had discussions on the timeline, and that'll be coming to the board later on. Hopefully we can do all this all at once and then wrap it up, and that'll be you know, from the indication I'm kind of getting from members of the executive committee, is then we would implement that for the 24 performance year, and then that'll see out the last year of, I think, Kelvin's first contract, hopefully first of several, but his first contract with us, and then we can go from there. But I think that's kind of where we're at right now.
But I guess my question to you is, if there was a closed session and 3 board members were not prepared to discuss the goals, then what are the goals? Since you're saying we're not going to change the evaluation until 2024, which, by the way, I completely agree with, I'm asking, what are the current goals? Because as a new trustee, I'm not sure.
The goals that Director Watson has created are aligned with the strategic plan that we approved. So they didn't, and I'll pull them up. I'll find them. So they didn't exist in a vacuum. We set the parameters by which the executive director is to operate, and that is how he's operating. Again, that's how it worked last year, and we're working that way again. The director's goals, which by extension are also the organizational goals, are leadership development, leadership training and development, complete milestone 1 of 3-year leadership development plan and cultural assessment, which the milestone for year 1 is conduct Gallup G12 engagement survey, conduct interviews, cultural assessment with administrative team, conduct administrative team building training, 2.5 hour effective leaders, managing different personality styles, the trust factor, functional communication, effective personal management, enforcing performance expectations, the 5 behaviors of a cohesive team, and empowering performance management. Objective 2 is enhance and expand on external partnerships, locally and nationally. Objective 3, execution of the district strategic plan, Playbook 2026, people, places, partnerships, and platforms. Objective 4, West Las Vegas project and capital improvement library projects to include Enterprise, Spring Valley, Whitney, and West Charleston. And number 5, develop and monitor annual budget within established parameters.
So we're going to have, you'll send us that document.
Yes, so the special meeting that we're going to try to calendar next week is going to be specifically to discuss those 5 things.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, so that's just what I want to say. I want to say that I feel like as far as an evaluation for 2024, I think that makes a lot of sense. And I also know that the city, the county have also implemented things like a 360 evaluation, which I think is something that we should just at least discuss.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Trustee Whiteley.
Just for the record, I was one of the 3 people who was like, I'm not prepared to discuss these goals at this meeting. So I just want to provide some clarity around that for some of our newer members. I think when this has been a new process, as Keith said, like, we haven't been involved in this before. So there was a lot of, I felt that there was a lot of confusion about it. And there was some desire for us to state goals for Executive Director Watson in that meeting, which I did not come prepared to do. I'm quite comfortable with the goals that he's laid out as they align with the strategic playbook and his job description, which are the things I think we should be holding him accountable to. But I was one of the people. I'm, again, the problem.
Thank you, Trustee Whiteley. And I'll just echo that. Part of my, certainly when we had discussed his performance last year, again, the board passed the strategic playbook, and all of the executive director's personal goals and performance goals for the year are derived from that. And I'll just speak for myself as someone who no notes. So I never saw a need for me, certainly, to get involved in the conversation or change any or update any, but that's just me. So we'll create this opportunity here in the coming months to give all board members an opportunity to do that, and then as we're looking forward to the form, creating a space on a new form to add that in. But I want to give Director Watson a chance to speak because obviously he's the person who has to live under this. So I definitely think that he should kind of have a leading role in it as well. So Director Watson.
Thank you, Chair Wah. I would say, I've submitted the goals, and as you mentioned, I have developed the goals for myself, the organization, along with all of the directors, based on the strategic playbook that, as you mentioned, was implemented in the summer of 2021. That has been what we have used to drive the work. I will say that, this is, having also done evaluations of other leaders and having been evaluated before, and actually, Trustee Sanchez mentions the 360 evaluation. I've also participated in that, but so not opposed to that, but those would also be, that would be in addition to a 360 evaluation, in my opinion, and how it's been used before in my work has been in addition to the regular goal setting process, right? So I'm just saying, so as we look at tools that we do evaluations, because the other thing that I have discussed with Director Serpico and what we're working towards as an organization for the employees of the library district is a 360 evaluation as well. But we're working towards those things. That's why we're doing the leadership training and development that I'm also participating in with the leadership team, as well as with as we get to the 3-year point where all of our staff will have been have gone through this process. So I'm okay with, I think we move forward with the timeline. I think that that's appropriate that we have a timeline, but I also will say that from a goal setting perspective, as someone who has, again, set my goals, because they are my goals, as well as I don't set my director's goals. They bring the goals to me and we work it out to determine how we're going to work towards those. So that would be where I would say is that it would be interesting to have the board set my goals outside of the framework of the strategic playbook. And again, the things that we've already continually been doing as far as moving the library district forward and executing on what we've been executing on.
Thank you. And the one thing that I'll add as well is speaking about the goal setting is in my day-to-day job, this is just reference. In my day-to-day job, I'm certainly not a director of a library system, but I also set my own goals. And then work those out with my department director. So I certainly I don't know, part of me, for me, I guess part of my hesitation through a lot of this conversation has been I feel that us getting too far into goal setting directly for the executive director kind of borders on micromanagement, and I worry about that. Number one thing that we talked on before was that it's not something we've done with previous directors. Certainly if there's room for correction, there's room for correction, that ongoing feedback, but I don't want to be in a position where we, a part-time, essentially volunteer board, are making, hard decisions and goals, and Kelvin, you will do X, Y, and Z, because I don't think that's our role, our governance role, number one. Go ahead, Jerry.
Yeah, I just wanted to offer, since I'm the only one that's been here through the prior directors, that we used to have what is now the strategic playbook. We used to call the 5-year plan, and they would evaluate the director based on their accomplishments directly to the 5-year plan, which is, I think, what Kelvin is saying. So that went every year for as long as I can remember, and it was always in the summer, and by contract we had to evaluate them, or they wouldn't have gotten their increases and their pay wouldn't have continued. So they've been evaluated, as far as I know, every year. In COVID, I can't tell you, and of course when I had my surgery, I sort of lost track. But other than that, certainly for all the years we've had an executive director by contract, they had to be evaluated, and they were evaluated based on if they were complying and how they were complying with the 5-year plan. So it wasn't goal setting. It was if they were meeting the goals that had already been set by the board in the 5-year plan, now the strategic playbook. So I don't know if that helps or not, but I just wanted to offer that.
And Jerry, you're such a young man. I sometimes forget you've been here so long. So thank you.
Then Nate, may I share a few comments?
Go ahead.
Yeah, and so for me, I know we've all had varying experiences on boards or evaluating our own team members or evaluating other executive directors in organizations. And I think it's incredibly important that, you know, Kelvin or whomever is the executive director be given the autonomy to write their goals as they see it in the day-to-day of what's needed to align with the strategic plan of the library. But I think it's also important within that sort of process that within the timeline that there is something built in for the director to sort of present what those goals are to the board for us to better understand how those goals relate to the strategic plan. And if there are things that we need to sort of further discuss to agree on those, I think that's the part of the process that's the most important part to me, is that there is clarity on what the goals are and that there is agreement on what the goals are, not that we as a board need to come and sort of craft all these goals that, you know, Director Watson or whomever should be working on, because we're not the experts in the day-to-day of the library. And I don't think any of us are trying to be. I think our focus is to make sure that the library is moving in the right direction and that we are sort of the providing that governance part, right? And the other part I think is important too within the timeline is that we build in some check-ins with the director. Like, you know, I know like with my team members and when I'm on the board for other organizations, like we do sort of a check-in with the executive director either quarterly or at the 6-month period just to say, yep, we're on track. We're doing well. If we're not doing well, let's talk about the things that aren't going well so we can sort of take the necessary corrective action, because it's all about setting up every employee to be successful by giving the employee feedback and support where needed. Because as a board, we also have an obligation to help further and support the goals of the library. And they may be things that we need to do in leveraging our own personal networks, professional networks, and the clear roadblock that may be an impediment to the director being able to accomplish things or other team members. So I think that's the part in the process I think is also incredibly important to represent in the timeline, that if we're talking about building this thing to be a more comprehensive process.
I would completely agree with that. This is Elaine Sanchez. I completely agree with that. And I don't want to, you know, check every box and make what the goals are for Kelvin. And I also agree with Kelvin that, you know, if we even discussed a 360, that is just a data set. It's not the end all be all, but it is to help to solidify, number one, that we get to, if we're following the playbook, we get to that location, and that we are somehow, you know, told on a quarterly basis or whatever, where are we on certain things. And I know we have board meetings, but sometimes we get into the weeds of things because we have to, because, you know, you have staff members trying to explain to us, you know, who are the architects, what are they doing, what does this contract have? And sometimes it's hard to see the forest from the trees. And so I do think it would be nice if we had something quarterly where we have, you know, we can discuss where we're at in the strategic plan and, you know, how's everything going. The other thing I'd like to add is, and this is because I am new, but I know that Kelvin speaks to staff members, and I know that we are invited, you know, online to listen to what he has to say to staff members. And I think when I first got in, I was invited, but I think I found out the day of or the morning of. And I would like to be able to find out if we could, you know, get involved or at least listen to that, to what staff has to say about what's going on with the strategic playbook. If we could just, you know, get told ahead of time so I could put it on my calendar, and then maybe I wouldn't have as many questions, you know, again, knowing that I'm new.
Thank you. And so I know that so I think along with that, now what I was gonna say in regards to kind of what Vice Chair Rogers and Trustee Sanchez said is that those half times, those little meetups are a really great source of information to find out where we are. And so I think in addition to finding a way, which I believe those are monthly check-ins, is you know, either participating in those, but I don't know if Director Watson, if we can do mid-year kind of, this is where we were first half and this is where we're heading the next half, and then kind of wrap it all up at the end of that. Kind of your thoughts, and then I'll go to
So I think at one of the board meetings when this was brought up by Trustee Sanchez, that we responded that we will make sure that the board is invited, the trustees are invited. We have been doing this the town halls twice a year. We do one in December and we do one in July. So we certainly will share the December date. Ebony will send that out to you, to the trustees today. We'll have that done today. As far as the status of the strategic playbook, the directors report every month on the status of the playbook as it pertains to every area of the library district. So that's something that's in your reports every month. We've been doing that since August of 2021. The directors take each one of the playbook portions and they report on different aspects as it pertains to the deliverables and what they're doing and what their staff is doing regarding our strategic plan.
Nate, if I may, really quickly, I think we're really what Keith said. I think if I could just say ditto to that, I would 100%. The timeline, as I said when we first jumped on, I think is really important. I think Elaine makes good points about the timeline as well. What I want to be really clear about, though, and I called this out in my evaluation comments of Executive Director Watson this past year, is the incredibly detailed way in which he and the administrative committee report back to us, similar to as he just said. So if anyone has any concerns about how we are following the playbook, I'm not sure it's reasonable to ask anyone to communicate those better than they are being communicated now. Everybody's report literally says powerful places with a huge list, powerful people with a huge list. So I think I would ask that we need to have timing. Keith is absolutely right. We have to set people up for success and make sure they know if they're meeting or not meeting goals. 100% updates are great, but let's make sure we're using the resources that we have at our fingertips first before we start creating additional rounds of reports. Because I don't know about you guys, but I would really rather we keep going on this really aggressive and fantastic and award-winning path that we're on than to side note and give Executive Director Watson another 5 hours of reports to do a month or even a quarter. I'm down for a semi-annual review, but do we need every third meeting to have a review of these goals? That, to me, that feels a little bit much.
I think semi-annual would be wonderful. That's what I think.
So, Director Serpico, with that timeline that we had discussed, could you add some sort of mid-year thing and then send that to me, and I'll share it with the executive committee for comments before we take it to the full board. So we'll work on the calendar piece. So we're almost 40 minutes in. So I want to kind of start wrapping up and talking about next steps. How does this group want to move forward on this? Is it asking Director Serpico and Executive Director Watson to kind of take these comments and incorporate them into either the existing form, i.e. a space to I don't know, comment on what, but kind of take those comments, or do we want to just do a whole new thing, or where's everyone at? Trustee Whiteley.
Okay, sorry. I feel like I'm being too domineering and I apologize for that. In my mind, I would take just a couple of those key characteristics that we're applying to the administrative team, and I would add those to the top of the goals section, where that way people can talk about, do they feel like, I can't remember, and I have too many windows open, so I can't find that form, but where people can give a 1 to 5 on the characteristics that we're asking of our leader in general. sort of as we do for the administrative team. And then I would leave the goals and let's just talk about the goals in a more open way. And I know you said you and Director Serpico were working on a timeline, so I'm assuming that gels up. And if we do these mid-year check-ins, I think that we shouldn't deviate too far from what we have for the 2024 review.
And then Director Serpico also, I know one comment that was raised was there wasn't any kind of opportunity for open comments at the end. So if you could just put like a open evaluated comment at the end as well for if folks just want to jot stuff down. Vice Chair Rogers, Secretary Harron, any thoughts?
No, I think what Kate just summarized is the path forward, and along with what you shared. So I'm just looking forward to next steps.
Sounds good. Secretary Harron?
Nope, I'm in complete agreement.
Okay. So Trustee Whiteley, just to keep things clean, do you want to put that in the form of motion?
Oh boy, I'll do my best. Jerry, I'm looking at you right through my camera. I move to ask Director Serpico to amend the review form for the Executive Director annual review
to include the characteristics
to include
leadership competencies.
Thank you. That's the phrase I was looking for. To include leadership competencies as it relates to our expectations of the Executive Director.
And a comment box on the bottom.
And add a box for additional comments following the goals section.
Is there a second?
Second.
There's a motion and a second. Any discussion on the motion? All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed, no. That is the direction to Director Serpico, and Director Serpico, when you make those changes, please, motion passed. If you can send that draft form to me, and again, I'll just circle it one more time for the executive committee, and get any tweak notes before we bring it back to the and then we'll have it on for the full board to look at along with the calendar. Okie dokie. With that, let me pull up my agenda closed. While I'm waiting for this to reopen, Tuesday, November 7th, the Board of County Commissioners is honoring Council Welt for his many years of service to the Las Vegas Clark County Library District. So I'd encourage you all to join us Tuesday at 9 a.m. at the Commission Chambers. Commissioner Naft will be presenting Council Welt with a proclamation recognizing his 48 years of service to libraries here in Southern Nevada. That doesn't mean he's retiring. That just means we're recognizing him. Finally, agenda item number 5, public comment. Is there any closing public comments from anyone? Seeing none, we'll close public comments. And agenda item number 6. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
So
I want
moved.
to say for the record that Trustee Rogers and Trustee Shelton and Trustee Sanchez joined the meeting, please.
Sounds good. Thank you. And then just to clarify for everyone as we go through this process, this new form that Jeff is working on will take effect for the 24-25 performance year. So this year coming up, we're just going to use the form without those 2 additions. But then for the performance period that starts July 1st, if the board approves that form, that's the form that we'll use. Okie dokie. There's been a motion and a second to adjourn. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Awesome. I hope everyone has a great rest of your week, great weekend, and we'll see everyone next week. Have a great day.
Thank you, Trustee Sanchez and Shelton and Dukowski for joining us.
Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you guys for letting us speak. Thank you so much. Bye.
Bye.